Good morning, everybody, as you're joining us to the first session for 2026. So hopefully we'll be seeing a lot more of everybody throughout the year. The speaker that's going to take us off this morning is Mpho Matsitse, which we are very excited to have with us. And of course, we're joined by our partners, Better Place to Work. And this whole initiative is brought to you to help our own teams internally create a better place to work. With speakers, with partners like Better Place to Work, and of course for our customers. So we get asked a lot. Our customers ask us on a fairly regular basis, actually, for speakers who have helped build and shape the growth of large organizations locally and globally. Speakers who also know the African continent well and know how to thrive in this environment. We get asked that a lot. And then also someone who understands sales in large organization environments and maybe worked with multinationals and have achieved massive success in this regard. So that is my way of introduction to Mpho Matsitse. I mean, we're very excited to hear what he's about. He brings global solutions to local challenges, which is very close to our heart. And I also love what you said, Mpho, about building people as much as building businesses. Isn't that so important? Bear Grylls has got this mantra about be courageous, but be kind. And I think maybe we lost our way a little bit generations back, where we're building all the passion, everything behind it. But are we building people? Are we bringing them along? Are we being kind? So I also get a sense that you're really good at asking the right questions. So without any further ado, we want to hand over to you, Mpho. Take us away.
Thank you so much, Paul, and good morning, everybody. I hope you're well this Monday morning. So most of us have a Karen or two that we know, or better yet, our Karens ourselves. And if you don't know who Karen is, then you just clearly have not complained enough. And by way of introduction, my name is Mpho Matsitse, as Paul has indicated. I'm a certified global keynote speaker. I'm a C-suite commercial executive and a board member on several boards. My expertise literally intersect where AI meets people and where purpose meets innovation. And today, we are delving into a topic that touches every single one of us every day, building a service culture where complaints are embraced and not ignored. Okay, sorry, my slide's a bit stuck. There we go. So over the next 20 minutes or so, we'll be exploring a myriad of key elements and what makes up a real winning service culture. And more importantly, why it matters to our customers and constituents. At the end of this talk, I want you to walk away with a better understanding of the human psyche, why people actually complain. I want you to have an insight into how to gain business and personal value from complaints. And lastly, a set of really actionable frameworks that you can immediately apply in order to build a winning service culture for your organization. So let's get straight into it. Now, let's begin with understanding ourselves a little better. So humans, attention span fell in 2025 to just 8.25 seconds. And our screen attention span fell from 2.5 minutes in 2004 to just 47 seconds in 2025. Now, to put it to context, ladies and gentlemen, the attention span of a goldfish is a whopping 9 seconds. That means if you had a staring contest between yourself and your fish at home, your fish will probably win. So the long and the short of it is that customers are more impatient, they're more emotionally driven, they're more empowered, and the one that really hurts the most, they're less loyal. All right. So in a world where attention is essentially the currency and the largest availability of mobile phones, smartphone platforms, etc., allow us to share experiences, really complaints are really at the center of how we drive service. Now, we live in an always on instant gratification economy where tolerance is down, expectations are sky high, and silence is considered as disrespect. There is a well-established behavioral bias that speaks to loss aversion, right? That indicates that as humans, we are experience loss strongly or twice as strongly as we experience gain. Which means then when service fails, it's not so much the service in itself, but it's the emotional impact that it has, right? It feels personal. It really feels unfair. It feels threatening. So customers complain because they're not really reacting to inconvenience. They reacting to the perceived loss of time, of dignity, of trust, of control in a particular situation. Now, one thing about us as a people, we don't want to be corrected, right? We seek to be understood. In fact, there was a study that was conducted quite a long time ago and really seek to understand how people think. They recorded about 1,300 or so odd phone calls, and the word I was utilized 3,000 times within the first 2 hours. That indicates something to us that as a people, we deem ourselves to be extremely important. We believe that we are the center of attention. And when we receive bad service, the underlining message that that creates, the unspoken word, is that you don't matter enough. Anyone who is criticized, especially in HR, you'd hear there's constructive criticism. Unfortunately, there is no such thing. Anyone who is criticized experiences what we call an emotional hijack. So, this is when the brain switches from social thinking into self protection. This is what Daniel Goleman describes as an emotional hijack within emotional intelligence. The moment a person feels criticized, the brain relocates capacity from understanding you to protecting itself. This is why when customers uh, they don't want to hear your explanation. They don't want to hear your coaching. They don't want to have conversations about why it happened. It becomes more positional than collaborative. And that's because the emotional center of the brain, which is the limbic system, activates much faster than the rational center. And the result is that reasoning capacity drops, curiosity drops, empathy drops, and listening accuracy drops. And this applies on both sides of the coin. The psychological pain of time wasted, broken trust, and unmet expectations outweigh far and by far any benefit or value you may have delivered in the previous time or previous interaction with a particular customer. And this is really where, as humans, we get complicated, but really the reasons why we complain. Now, the hard truth is that most organizations don't have a service problem, they have a listening problem. And every complaint that is received is not an indication of a failure of service, but it's really a moment of truth. And it's in how you respond that really determines if you win loyalty or you lose relevance. Because complaints in themselves are big indications of how customers feel when they receive your service. Now, we live in a world where we have infinite choice, right? You can imagine if you're trying to watch something on Netflix, how many times do you click through and scroll through before you actually find something that you actually want to watch? So it's winning, a winning service culture is really no longer a nice to have. It's a growth strategy, ladies and gentlemen, right? Complaints are psychological insight into how customers feel about your product and your service. Now, give you an example, and I'm sure you didn't know these facts, but did you know that algae, right? So life's good was a facial cream? They make TVs now and a whole bunch of other stuff. IKEA was a pen. Lamborghini was a tractor company, guys. All right. And how did that all come about? Well, a number of facts, but one of the key ones, and we'll focus on the Lamborghini story. So, if you didn't know, Lamborghini was actually a tractor maker, and he owned a whole bunch of Ferraris that were made by Enzo Ferrari. And how he came about to make sports cars is that he used to complain to Enzo to say, Enzo, your cars really, it's not about performance, look, or design, but it's really just about reliability. They're just not reliable, especially the clutch in the car. And obviously, Enzo just dismissed him, like, how dare you? I mean, I make the best cars in the world. How dare you look at my product and tell me that it's not good enough? And what did Lamborghini do? He went and made his own sports car and became one of the fiercest and biggest rivals to Ferrari, which possibly might have not happened if he had just managed it better. All right. So the customer of today has four key traits that I need you to understand. The first one is that they're emotionally intelligent. All right. They expect empathy and not scripts, especially to how to respond to complaints that they raise. They are time poor. because speed to them equals respect. It shows that they're important enough when you respond and resolve and engage in a really a speedy way. Third is that they socially amplified. One bad experience travels extremely fast. I'm sure you've seen those posts on LinkedIn about a bank that just did not do what it was supposed to do, or those Twitter posts or Instagram. Everyone is very vocal when it comes to receiving bad experience. They have values driven. So a lot of the organizations today need to understand that customers judge organizations on their culture and not so much on their product or service. So the customer of the future is really not loyal to brands. They're loyal to experiences. And here's the kicker, right? Your frontline teams are actually not competing with your competitors. They are competing with the best experience your customer had yesterday, which may have not even been in your industry, may have been in another industry, right? So winning companies today have four key patterns that they need to engage on or at least follow if they want to stay ahead. The first one is that they need to treat complaints as data points, right? Every complaint feeds a product. It feeds a process. It feeds a policy redesign. So we need to understand what those data points are. To give you an example, one of the global leading pharmaceutical company CEO, what he did in an engagement survey with customers, as opposed to looking at the NPS scores and the rest of it, he used AI to leverage out of the 9,000 words that were part of that survey that were at least shared by the survey participants. He used AI to give the top three words that describe the best parts about the organization and the top three words that describe the least best parts about the organization, which really narrows it down to accuracy around what customers are looking for, what they expect, and how they expect it, which is very important. The second key pattern is that you need to empower your front line. Speed is empathy, but empowerment is respect. And what we're saying is that organizations that really empower the front line to lead with empathy and emotional understanding, a love for people and understanding their place of hurt based on what we just described, really win. It's very seldom that you see organizations win when complaints are raised and we lead with a script. How many times have you called a call center and you explained your situation and your challenge, and the call center agent says to you, well, it wasn't me, ma'am. It wasn't me, sir. It was somebody else that handled the query. And well, it just aggravates and further aggravates your posture and how you feel about the complaint. The third is that, excuse me, they expose your real culture. So complaints are really the most accurate culture audit you possess, right? Because there is absolutely no process that you can utilize to work your way out of a culture problem. So you need to take a step back and understand, what are the complaints telling you? Fourth is that they close the loop. So nothing builds trust faster than saying, you raised this, and here's what we did about it. In fact, complaints are a trust accelerator. Most leaders think complaints damage trust, but in reality, if it's handled well, they manufacture trust at speed. Because a complaint is the only moment where your customer feels and exposes their vulnerability and gives you an opportunity and a permission to disappoint them and still recover. So this aligns directly with behavioral science and shows what we believe about behavioral science when it comes to threat and safety in human interaction. So if your service culture is designed to defend the organization before it validates how a customer feels, you will always lose trust before you can even fix the problem. So now you must be asking yourself, well, Mpho, then how do I prepare as an organization? How do I ensure I'm able to then stay ahead of the curve and become and build a winning service culture? There are really three key ways that we're going to describe. The first one is a service readiness, right? You need to run a service diagnostic across four key categories. The first one is authority, the second is language, the third is protection, and the last is feedback. What we mean when we talk about authority is that, can frontline staff solve a problem without your permission? When it pertains to language, are people trained to respond emotionally before operationally, or is it vice versa? When you speak to protection, is your staff punished when complaints escalate, or they are empowered to make decisions on the front line? And feedback flows really speaks to, does complaint insight change decisions upstream? And that's very important. Do you take your complaints that you get from your customers important enough to change how you do things? Now, the second one is talking about the care loop. And in this instance, I use care as an acronym, right? Where C stands for connect emotionally, A stands for acknowledge loss, R stands for restore control, and E stands for explain only after dignity has been restored. This aligns directly to what we discussed earlier about threat, identity, and defensiveness. And what it looks like on the floor is that instead of saying, according to policy, your team should lead with, I can hear how frustrating this has been for you. Let me take ownership and fixing it with you. This immediately refrains the empowerment that you then give your guys on the front line because they drive their interactions with emotional opening statements, they have an ownership language, and they ban policy first language in complaints handling, which really significantly makes your customers feel heard and engaged. The last one and the last framework is the leadership behavior mirror. Now, this is one of the key frameworks that is most underestimated and least engaged, and it is the most important. And now I want you to close your eyes a little bit as a leader, and I want you to think in positions where an escalation has happened, with your eyes closed. These are the only four questions you should be asking. What system failed? Not who failed. The second is, what made this hard for the customer emotionally? Third, what made this hard for our employees psychologically? And fourth, what will we remove or redesign? Now, as you open your eyes, this principle is deeply consistent with how leaders and leading organizations such as Zappos build their culture around how the leadership sets the tone for emotional safety when complaints engage, right? So some of the best organizations have introduced what they call a customer moment in Exco. In Dubai, you'd know this as a happiness index that exists within government where they measure citizen happiness. And most of them have prohibited a blame language in service reviews. Now, I told you about brands that have changed. For example, how Samsung was once a grocery store. In a world that is fast changing and we're all adapting to this way of life and trying to stay ahead of the curve, your complaints may actually be the catapult into a diversified revenue stream that you are not aware about because your customers are telling you what it is that they need from you and how they need it from you, which is extremely important. Now, I want you to remember in closing that your employees will treat customers exactly the same way you treat complaints as an organization. So if as leaders we avoid complaints, they will too. But if we embrace them, cultures will transform. The organizations that win in the future are not ones with fewer complaints. No, they'll be the ones that respond better, respond faster, and more human. Because in an AI-led world, we need to be more intentional about our humanity. We need to be brave enough to listen. And we need to drive service readiness that's not driven by CX, CRM, or any great system, but it's organizationally designed to cater for the customer. Now, thank you so much for your time and attention. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, feel free to scan the QR code. And I hope next time you pull a Karen, you share your frustrations with the greatest of empathy. And as a listener of those complaints, you take them with the utmost seriousness because it could change whether you become a tractor company or a sports car powerhouse. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mpho. I know your preference is not to do this virtually, but to be rather in person. I can imagine how interactive and engaging you'd be. However, having said that, you were pretty good. I mean, like I could have listened to you for quite some time. The time flew, and yet within that time, you gave us such unbelievable nuggets. You're a very good connector, but you're also a really good explainer as to you obviously think very carefully about what you're saying and what you want to try and get across. So that was I thought a really really good session. Yeah, a lot of you know our customers are on the line or are they going to be watching this video later, just generally have their challenge is to position you now with their stakeholders. So if you could, you know, we've got a fairly good idea about what you bring, and about your background, and I think anybody on a call on this call now would know you're fantastic, and you would be a great addition into the business, into the conference, the retreat, whatever it may be that the need is, for you, for your skills. Um, but have you got any tips for them about how they could position you well? So if they had to bring you with, and we can't in every case, what would you say to their stakeholders, which would generally be the person who actually owns the conference? So it'd be somebody usually from the executive team, or like the sales director, or it could be the marketing director. It could be the CEO. Um, and ultimately, and sometimes it's a number of, and you know what the makeup is like in
Yeah.
organizations. So any advice or any tips from you would be amazing about how we can position you better from our customers' perspective.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you so much. I really think for me, there's really two key ways, right? And I'll start with the one that I recently did. A lot of organizations recently are exploring AI and they're investing in AI. But what people don't realize is the underlying cost of a failed experiment when it comes to AI. Is it a trinket? Is it a toy? Or is it actually something that it has a real use case in the organization that actually solves a problem? And mostly where the underlying challenge becomes is mindset. Because what people don't realize is that AI and all this technology advancement has created is extreme anxiety, especially within the leadership banner. So when operations do not transform and digital is not adopted and AI is just another toy, it's really because your leadership mindset and posture has not changed. You've got a deliberate leadership cohort that is stalling your progress. And it's important for you to then unpack what that is, give them assurances of how they can lead in an AI-led world or a world that thinks for itself. And I think I'd be definitely key to helping you in unlocking that value. The second one really speaks to me around sales, which is like a huge passion of mine. So I help monetize key areas of the business that are not doing well, and I help really turn around businesses. So I'll give you two key examples of organizations that I've helped get out of a sticky situation. So firstly is a solar organization a couple of years ago. Solar boomed because of the power cuts and we had COVID, etc. But they went door to door with their sales and they were just not understanding why they're not converting enough. And that's because they did not have a key business value metric that they were putting at the center of how they do business. So when I came into the organization to sort of help them, was one, you selling a solar solution that sits on top of a residential house of a employee base that predominantly works from home. So what we came up with and what I positioned is to sit with the HR team that really looks at employee wellness and employee benefits. So the EVP, employee value proposition in the organization. And we said at the center of that, most households that earn just over 300,000 Rand joint income a year, there's quite a large number of those in the corporate itself. So what the corporate could do, they could introduce for a minimum value of between 1,500 to 2,500 Rand a month, they could introduce a solar solution. So when you joined USB Inc., you get a solar solution on your house for 1,005 that gets deducted from your payroll before you even hit your payslip. All right. This is a value proposition that the organization gives you. The ownership sits with you, but the discount sits with the organization. So if you leave, that price might go slightly higher. But because it's there, it allows the employees to then work from home without having huge issues around productivity being interrupted because of power cuts that happen at different times. Now, this gave them a solid revenue base because they then had a set of customers that they can engage immediately. They didn't have to go door to door, so it reduced the sales cycle a lot more because once you close an organization, you know your conversion rate was sitting just above 33% in that particular corporate. Another one was a management consulting house, so four guys that left McKinsey, BCG, and others, and started their own consulting firm. Now, to compete with a Deloitte to McKinsey is quite hard in the normal scheme of things. Let's be realistic about small business. But a lot of banks and a lot of funders have what they call ESD programs, so enterprise supply development programs. So what then happens is that Paul is my bank, all right? and I borrow money from Paul against a contract that I may have with Kim or Kathy. Now, the bank is only making interest on that particular loan, but the challenge is that these small businesses are not growing. Okay, so they're only borrowing just 3 million. So what I introduce is that if there are the management consulting cohort inside the bank that gets offered alongside with the loan, and they bill the bank a very reasonable hourly charge, they could scale and grow these businesses, help them better manage cash flow, and better help the organizations to grow, especially within emerging markets, and to capture more of their sales or market share. What this resulted in is that the bank was able to borrow and loan more, gain higher interest fees, but the organizations themselves in the ESG programs grew. And the management consulting house that I was helping made a healthy margin from consulting gigs that really had meaning and they had purpose because they were helping organizations that really needed the help and not the big corporates that really give you the runaround when certain things are happening. So my skill set really comes at the forte around creating business value. I've got deep-seated skills in business value engineering, where I've helped scale businesses across Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and Africa. And we've really done that quite well to the point where I can help you measure directly to the T. We've done this as part of a global study that I ran when I was with IFS, but we can help you grow the size of your deal by 3 times. We can improve your sales linearity by about 44%, and I can certainly help you to be 2.7 times more likely to close on budget with the customer because you created a buying need. All right. Now, I'm sure there's many questions around how do we do that, but I can tell you now, convincing the CFO is one of the key things that I'm really great at, and that can certainly help you drive your sales velocity within your different businesses, depending obviously on the service or product that you sell. I predominantly work with B2B organizations in the sales ambit, but I'm happy to take on the challenge of a B2C as well. Thank you.
Fantastic. And we can see where your experience comes out in all of that in in helping us frame you better. Good, good. Well, I've got a question. We don't. I know we're running out of time, but there's a question now from Mercy. She's the sort of global business development director at Better Place to Work. An amazing message and lessons in Poe. From a leader's perspective, are there any tweaks which leaders should make in treating their employee complaints with a similar lens as they treat customer complaints? Um, so yeah, I mean, I know what you said about mindset of leaders. That's one of the biggest things to try and get the way they see things differently.
Yeah.
Would you be able to sort of add a little bit more to that?
No, I could certainly. I think Mercy, if I'm getting the name right, one of the key things that as leaders we fail to understand is where to position people. Now, take a soccer team for example. Not everybody can play goalkeeper, right? Otherwise, then we don't have a team that actually drives the winning score. So I really believe in putting people where they're best suited in order to drive the most impact in the organization. So when complaints come from employees, especially around managers or how certain customers bully them, etc., I think there's really 4 key elements one needs to understand, and which is my framework called the 4 Ps. The first one is personality type. You need to understand what the personality type of your frontline actually is. You need to understand what their passions are. Is it selling, business development, or actually solving customer problems? Because customer success management and sales and business development are all 3 different disciplines. The third P is understanding really what the purpose or what they believe their purpose in the organization is. And last is defining the path so that you are then able to identify from a rather emotional skills audit rather than a tactical aptitude skills audit where your your key employees are best placed. Sometimes we make the mistake of placing our more phlegmatic, more people feeling people in the front line and then takes so long to resolve a query. And by the time they give you the complaint, it sounds like a whole bunch of, yeah, we could have done this better, etc. But it doesn't feel like we're moving the needle forward. So I think the first thing leaders need to do is take a really big interest in understanding who their people are and what they believe and then start placing those key individuals in the front line. Because what I've found, especially when we're doing transformation projects, Mercy, is that it's not always the leaders that have the biggest influence. They have authority, yes, but you will find that it's always the least likely individual that has a ton of influence on whether something is going to be adopted or not. And those are the people that we should be utilizing as sales agents or change agents in order to change and really transform the posture and the mindset of the organization and its people in order to move forward. So I hope that helps. I hope it gives a little bit of insight around what one could do to solve that problem.
It was a lovely question. I think the last one then, if that's okay, from the leader. She's got her hand up there. Must be getting tired by now. Alida, over to you.
Sorry,
Just on
leader,
mute,
you're on
Alida.
mute.
I'm muted. I'm sorry. Seance
No.
again. Really great presentation, Paul. I learned a lot, and thank you very much. I just want to ask your process for sales optimization. Is it just, can you also do it for services, or is it just in the commodities department that you can do that?
It's actually in services, Alida.
Okay, so
I think
yeah,
commodities, yeah, they follow after, but
yeah.
it's actually in services, yeah.
Yeah, no, I just want to know, because you said that you are able to assist people in getting better sales, and we're in the financial services industry, and as you know, that's a grudge buy
Yeah.
thing. You know, people don't like buying insurance and medical aid and those types of things. So, will you send us your details through the chat, or how to reach you?
Paul, I'm sure you can take that one.
Yes, no, absolutely, Alida. We'll definitely get a hold of you, and
Okay,
then
thank you.
move it forward. Maybe we can set up a meeting or just understand a little bit
Yes.
more what you're needing. But 100%, we're here to
Okay.
serve, and Paul will make sure we do
We
that.
Yeah,
definitely are.
yeah, yeah. As
Uh,
are we. Thank you. Thank you
of
very
course.
much.
Thank you, Alida.
100%, as you are indeed, as you are. Well, look, I mean, on that note, Mpho, I mean, thank you so much. Lots of lovely comments in the chat. You ran a really great session this morning, and you kicked us off in 2026 with our virtual sessions like this. So really appreciate it, and looking forward to working with you a lot more this year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Just
Thanks, Kathy.
we'll close off with Kathy. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Mpho. That was really great. It definitely was. I really like those 4 questions that when we had to close our eyes, those are really relevant, and people do have to take those into account to actually think about things and, to make the organizations run a lot smoother. Next week, we're going to have somebody from the US. He couldn't resist being on one of our showcases. His name is Mike Feeney, and he's a recognized mental health speaker and a certified corporate wellness specialist. He helps others transform stigma into strength through rhythm and story. So please join us again next week at 9 o'clock to see him.